This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to the American Monetary Association's podcast, where we explore how monetary policy impacts the real lives of real people and the action steps necessary to preserve wealth and enhance one's lifestyle.
It's my pleasure to welcome Samson Williams. He is co-founder and partner at Axes and Eggs. Samson, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Happy to be on the show today.
It's good to have you. So there's a lot of talk and a lot of regulation going on in the cryptocurrency space nowadays. What a busy cottage industry. I don't know if it's really a cottage anymore. It's becoming the talk of the town with the ups and the downs and rather startling regulatory changes that are just happening on an ongoing basis. Give us kind of your overall macro view of things, and then let's talk about what it takes to do an ICO. Initial coin offering, I should say.
Cool. No, the macro perspective. On the global scale, countries like Malta, Gibraltar, Estonia, Luxembourg, Singapore, Japan, they're leading the way for regulations and inviting blockchain startups to come into their jurisdictions. And they're making it very simple. They don't have bright line rules for ICOs, but they're making it very easy.
Explain what bright line is, if you will.
A bright line rule. I'm only a lawyer on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
Give you that disclaimer.
You play one on TV? Okay.
Yeah, I play one on TV too. A bright line rule is like a checklist. So say you're in the U.S. and you want to do a Reg CF, a regulation crowdfund deal for $1 million. There are rules that you follow. There's a steps and a process. And so if you want to do an ICO in Singapore, they have a pretty high-level checklist that says, hey, here's what you need to do. They have a great tax scheme that helps you pay very minimal taxes on your blockchain business as well as your actual ICO when you go off to do that.
So when you use the expression bright line, do you mean that the regulations are clear as opposed to murky?
Correct.
Okay. So you were talking about countries leading the way, and you're saying they don't have bright line rules, right? Or they do?
They don't have bright line rules, but they do have some sort of regulatory framework. And so when you juxtapose the SEC's framework, or rather the SEC's memos
at the United, so now you're talking about the United States, of course. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
So in the U.S., the SEC, or the Securities and Exchange, they hint at the regulations. One of the head of the SEC occasionally, he says, all ICOs are securities. However, they've not reviewed them. And then they have an argument with the CFTC, and they have an argument, or rather not an argument, but a disagreement with the CFTC and the IRS over what are cryptocurrencies, what is Bitcoin, is it a commodity, is it a securities? So just internally to the U.S., there's some ambiguity that has yet to be hashed out.
Right, and it seems like the basic two paths in the U.S. are you're either security token, a security coin, or a utility token, utility coin. Well, maybe you can go into that, but that seems to be the two choices in the U.S., and they're somewhat unclear, right?
Correct. So the difference between a cryptocurrency and a utility token. So a cryptocurrency is acting as a currency or as a security. And so the SEC, their position is that everything is a security. But a utility token, I like to use the example of, if you've ever been to Chuck E. Cheese, so you go to Chuck E. Cheese, you take your dollars, you get tokens, and then you go use those tokens in the arcades to play video games. And so there are a variety of ways that people are leveraging utility tokens to construct their own type of arcades, their own type of platforms to access information, to access services, in some instances to access trading bots so that your bots can go off and trade cryptocurrencies for you.
Mm-hmm. In other words, a lot of these people doing ICOs, initial coin offerings, saying that they are a utility token, are they going to be in trouble? Is the Securities and Exchange Commission going to end up attacking them?
Well, that actually takes a step back to the global context, because do they have American investors? Are they an American-based business? Are they based overseas? And so it really speaks to, if you're not an American-based business, do you really care what the SEC says? not antagonizing or chiding the SEC. It's we operate in a global economy.
Sure.
So many businesses.
But if you're if people in the U.S. are buying your coin, I assume, the SEC is going to say that's our prerogative and, you're going to be in trouble, right? Right.
That is a question that we are addressing daily, that is being addressed daily, because it just goes back to, do people on the internet have access to your offering? Yes or no? Have you taken the necessary steps to prevent someone who's in the U.S. from buying your coin or your token? Yes or no? Right. And then that's where the lawyers are going to chime in. And I always say that the ICO space, the cryptocurrency space, is a boom for lawyers because half of them are supporting and advocating cryptocurrencies and tokens. The other half are saying, no, they're all securities. So at the end of the day, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about how much it costs to do an ICO, the lawyers win because they're making it so you have to interact with them.
Right. Yeah. And, you want to be able to sell in the U.S. market because it's the biggest market, of course, right?
It is a sizable market. Is it the biggest market for traditional securities? Absolutely. But for cryptocurrencies, Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan, those players are really driving the cryptocurrency market. The real question is, as it applies to the technology, because you have to keep in mind that an ICO, or the function of an initial coin offering, is to raise capital for your startup, is to raise capital for your business, to grow your business. So once we look beyond ICOs and we look at the businesses, you will see that if you have a great business idea that leverages blockchain technology, if the regulatory structure is such that in the U.S. it costs $300,000 to issue what's called a Reg A+, and a Reg A+ just means you can raise up to $50 million from accredited or unaccredited investors. So as a startup, do you have that money to allocate towards lawyers, or do you go elsewhere where you can spend that money towards product development?
Got it. Makes sense. Okay. So let's talk about the different types of ICOs and how much it costs. There's a huge amount of interest in this space. Of course, everybody wants to get rich overnight in 15 seconds by doing an ICO and, make $257 million. Right. But it's not quite as it seems, right? There are a few amazing stories and then there are all the rest, right?
Yeah. So if you look at some of the highlights from last year, let's start off with Brave. So the Brave ICO, it was in March of 2017. It raised $35 million in 30 seconds. But it only had like 110 or 112 investors.
Wow. So very small. So the average investor was investing, how much would that be? A lot each, right?
They were by and large accredited investors. And so in that moment, it's, hey, this ICO raised a lot of money. But how many retail or everyday people got involved in that? Right.
Not many. Yeah.
Literally a handful. But that was the example that was touted in the media cycle. Oh, this ICO raises $35 million in 30 seconds. So everybody runs off.
But of course, like anything, it's not really 30 seconds. How long did it take to set up that ICO before the 30 seconds happened?
That's the hard part. Because, everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die. And so it takes about 3 to 6 months to set up an ICO. And if you go back, or rather, if you're familiar with just regular crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act.
Yeah, we've done a lot of shows on it.
So having done some shows on crowdfunding, first, you need to start off with a business plan. Secondly, you need a community to support your offering. And so this is where you get a lot of the hype, a lot of the pump and dumps, a lot of the groups on Telegram and Slack channels. They're talking about this hot, first of its kind, never been done before ICO, when it's really just they're raising money. There's been thousands of individuals who are raising money. So when you talk about a never been done before, first of its kind ICO, that's not true because an ICO is a fundraising mechanism. So you have to look at the business. And if you've ever started a business, that can take months to figure out what is your business plan, what goes in it, what's your burn rate, how are you going to hire staff, how are you going to make $1 in the next 30 days. And so the process actually starts much further out. When I say much further out, I mean much further out than the coin offering.
Your company consults people on doing an ICO, right? So can you break down the cost? And, it's 3 to 6 months, but what are the costs involved in doing it? I mean, the numbers we've heard are just all over the board. It's crazy.
It's very similar to building a house. It really depends on where you're at geographically. So if you want your average house in Austin, Texas, it costs you about $150,000. If you want to build that same house in San Francisco or New York, you're looking at $1.5 million and up. The reason is because you're going to pay people to do things for you. There is that instance where people are like, oh, everybody's going to work for tokens or work for coins. That's a fallacy, because your people who are working on your project, they need to buy soda, they need to buy lunch, they need to buy gas. And if you have a bunch of volunteers, that is not going to work in this market economy today. So in 2017, early 2017, yes, that worked. But now where you could get some people to come together to volunteer their time, but you need to get people to come together to volunteer their time for 4 to 6 months. Most people just can't afford that. And so everyone will reference Bitcoin, like, oh, Bitcoin, no one got paid. But if you look at the history of Bitcoin from when Satoshi Nakamoto released his first paper in August of 2009, he was literally the only person on the network until January of the next year. So for the first 6 months, nobody would play with him.
Right,
or would get on his Bitcoin
Okay.
project.
Okay.
And then Bitcoin, it's a 9-year overnight success story.
Right, like everything. But there are really quick overnight success stories. So take us through that ICO. I mean, Bitcoin, in a way, really didn't do an ICO like the way they're done now. I mean, he just created it, and then people just picked it up, right? I mean, yeah.
So the concept of an ICO, of hey, I've made this coin, give me money.
Right.
That's a 2-year-old concept.
Right. Okay.
The first cryptocurrencies, they did an ICO. They just started into production, and they built communities. And so the Bitcoin community is a huge community. There's no CEO, there's no board, there's no chief information security officer. It regulates itself. Occasionally they vote on something and have a consensus vote to fork or not to fork, right?
Right.
So for these other initial coin offerings, they're saying, oh, we have a community of 3 people. We put together this white paper. We put some people's names on it as a CEO, as a marketing
just
officer,
like a typical business
right?
plan. Yeah.
Just like a typical business plan. And then they say, give us money for our research and design. For instance, just using EOS, block.io, also known as EOS, they've raised, March? They've raised around $1.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
They're a software company that is not going to issue any software.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always wondering, this is my own personal question, what are they going to do with all this money they've raised?
Mm-hmm.
Have they been clear about it?
Right.
They're in month 9 of their quote-unquote initial coin offering, where they're continuing to raise money and funds, but what they are going to deliver for that, I believe they're supposed to have something delivered in June, but what is that? I don't know.
Nobody knows.
It's not out yet.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Go. I want to make sure we really stick in the interest of time. Just take us through the ICO steps, if you will. Just kind of give us the really simple view. Let's do the steps and the cost if we can. I mean, I know there's lots of examples you can fall back on this and that, which are quite fascinating, but of course, time is always limited. So yeah.
Fair enough.
So what do you do first? You want to do an ICO. Someone's got an idea. They want to do an ICO. What do they do? Like, what's their idea, I guess, first of all? It's a different kind of coin that acts differently, or what about that? And then what do they do? What are the steps?
So if you want to do an ICO, you have an idea. If you want to do it in real estate or gambling or pharmaceutical tracking, I tell everyone, go to CoinSchedule or Coin Alert and look up the industry. And see how many other people are out in that vertical right now. Okay. That's research. And so based upon the 1,600 or so ICOs that were done last year, approximately 48% of them have already failed.
By the way, is that Coin Alert or ICO Alert?
CoinSchedule.
Oh, CoinSchedule, sorry.
CoinSchedule.com and ICO alerts. There's many websites that provide you this information.
Yeah.
And so your initial coin offering, it starts off with your research. Has someone implemented your quote unquote unique idea already? If they have, do that research, reach out to them and say, hey, we saw you raise $3 to $4 million. You raised all this money. Why did you fail? Why has there been no action on your GitHub? And so how long that process takes, you could do as little as 10 minutes worth of research or as much as, 2 or 3 months worth of research. Because again, it goes back to how thoroughly do you want to research the application of your unique baby.
Okay.
And so many people realize, oh, someone has done this. Or they say, oh, no, this is still unique. Then, okay, you've had this idea. You've determined you are a unique baby. That costs you your time and energy and to research it. The next is, are you going to form a business to actually pursue your blockchain-based business? Because ICOs are for blockchain-based businesses. So then it just goes back to the basics of, I need to form a business. I need to get a business license. I need to register with my state and local county government. I need to do an incorporation. I need to get an EIN. All that boring stuff, that is just business 101. So I'm based out of Washington, D.C. It costs approximately $850 license for D.C. That's just a basic business license. You also will do an incorporation. So you'll think to yourself, hey, I'm in America, so I'm going to go to either Delaware or Nevada. Or, hey, I'm a blockchain-based business. Wyoming and Georgia have passed really convenient tax structures for blockchain-based business, so I'm going to incorporate in Wyoming. So you can go the LegalZoom route or the lawyer route, and that's going to cost you $3,000 to $5,000.
Okay.
Get your incorporations up. Then it goes to that nitty-gritty of, are you an army of one or do you have a team? So if you have a team, okay, who owns shares in this company? How are you going to allocate them, your ESOP, all those really boring administrative things? Because, again, your initial coin offering, that's a funding mechanism. That's like the last thing you do. And so once you've gotten your team, you've given equity to your team, then you determine what is your budget to actually pay for your team members. Do they understand that they're going to be working for X amount of months to help you build the basics of this business? Then you need to develop and flush out your business plan and articulate that out to your team members. You might have a very small team where it's, 3 people and they just wear multiple hats. Depending on your budget, you might have 4 or 5 people or 10 people. But before you go out to hire a bunch of people, you need to sit down as part of your business plan and develop a budget. That basic, I have X amount of money. So now that I have X amount of money, who can I afford to help with me on this project? And so really depending on where you're living and that person's circumstances to how much you're going to need to pay them so that they stop doing or pursuing their dreams and start pursuing yours.
Right.
So for us,
good.
That's what it comes down to.
Sure.
I tell people, you can't fire people you don't pay, and you can't hold someone accountable who's volunteering. So if you're going to build this first of its kind, revolutionary, groundbreaking bit of technology, but you have no intention of paying anyone, you're going to find that very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Because again, they literally just need.
Sure. Yeah. Well, So how much money have we spent so far?
So far, you spent $6,000 just in business formation,
That's
organization.
Easy. Yep. Right.
You're going to allocate some budget just for personnel. The next big ticket item is going to be your legals, because if you're based in the U.S., you need to determine based on your business model, how much is it a utility token or is it a cryptocurrency? Is it a token or securities?
Right.
And so either way, you're going to get a lawyer to say it's either a utility or say it's a cryptocurrency. So you should allocate another $20,000 to $30,000 at a minimum just to get an opinion. That does not include if they fill out any SEC forms. So if you go to do a Reg A Plus, at the top of the form, it's called a Form 1A. It says that this form will take 608 hours to complete, and the lawyer will bill you for 608 hours. Let's say it's $500 an hour. That's $300,000. right there.
Okay, so are they basically creating a private placement memorandum?
So a private placement memorandum, that will run you about $50,000. But a private placement
And it can run anywhere, by the way, from $1,000 to $50,000 or more. It's all over the board, but yeah, go ahead.
It is all over the board,
Right.
but it's also determining, are you dealing with retail or accredited investors?
Right.
So in the actual technology build side of it, when you go to build your blockchain-based tech, you're going to, depending on what you want your product to do, it's very similar to building an app. And so a cheap MVP app, it's like $15,000.
Yeah, minimum viable product. Yeah.
Minimum viable product, $15,000. If you wanted to actually work for more than 2 people on the app, it just goes up, because part of that is it's not only developing the app, it's testing the app, it's maintaining the app, it's security patches and updates. And so that's where you might start off at $15,000, but by the time you build a product that can scale, you're looking at $150,000, $300,000, and that doesn't include the security and the maintenance. And there's also this wonderful thing from Amazon Web Services where you might need to scale the back house of your infrastructure, just because, you know, you have a website and one day you go from 10 users a month to 10,000 a day.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
In which case, you need the infrastructure to back that
Right.
up.
So
That's
you can use
just by
AWS for that, or other vendors. But are we doing an ICO here or an ITO, an initial token offering or coin offering, or does it matter? And which is the better way to raise money? It needs to be the security, right?
It doesn't matter what you're talking about because the basis remain the same. You've got to start a company, hire people, build a product. 2018, you're not going to be able to launch without a prototype. You're not going to be able to raise money without a prototype.
Right.
And because you can no longer advertise your ICO or cryptocurrency.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, right.
Facebook, Twitter, Google is also implementing some constraints that kick off in June. You're going to have to spend money building a community. And that goes to your CAC, or your customer acquisition cost.
Right.
Your basic customer acquisition cost in the ICO space for 2017 was around $36 per person.
Well, what is it going to be now?
What is it going to be now?
Nobody knows.
And so no one knows. And so at $36 per person, it's a little funky, this math, because the average investment last year was 2.75 ETH, but the value of ETH fluctuate greatly. So at the end of December, an ETH was around $1,100. Right now, it's around $5.
What is the word you're using? An ETH? What is that word?
Ethereum. I'm sorry.
Oh, for Ethereum. Okay.
Ethereum,
yeah. Right. Okay.
or an ETH.
Yeah.
And so for that same $36 in December, you were getting basically, what's that, $2,500. But now that same $36 is only bringing you a little over $1,000 in an investment.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if you're trying to raise millions of dollars, you might need to put your deal out in front of, let's say you're trying to raise $22 million. You need to put your deal out in front of 22,000 people. When you put your deal out in front of 22,000 people, you have a 1% conversion rate, which is fairly normal. And so that's 2,200 people. And so how much does it cost to get your deal out in front of 220,000 people? So you can have a 2,200 people actually participate or invest in your deal. It's expensive.
Yeah.
Unless you have an organic community, because it doesn't really matter if you're doing a token sale or a cryptocurrency. Just keep in mind, if you are selling a token, you are selling a widget, you're not giving up equity.
Right.
Uncle Sam will come and tax you.
For selling the widget,
product.
For selling the token.
You sold the widget.
Yeah, right.
You need to pay me taxes.
Right,
so
sure.
State, local taxes, plus any federal taxes. So if you've raised $10 million, Uncle Sam's going to be like, great, that's income. That's revenue. We're going to tax you.
Yeah. Is that going to be capital gains or income? It's income. That's going to be income probably, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It depends on how you structured the sale. This is where the lawyers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's complicated like everything. Okay, good. Let's zoom it along. And what happens next?
So you actually do your marketing. And this talks about your customer acquisition costs, because you have to go out right now. This is March of 2018. There's approximately 3,000 ICOs in the space right now. how is your unique snowflake going to be noticed above all the other snowflakes?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you build a community who's passionate and will support you, or you have the money or the charisma to build that community.
Uh-huh.
So if you don't pay for it starting in June, you can't use Google AdWords. So you're going to have to find out a way to go out, beat the streets, drum up business, and say, participate in my token sale or my ICO.
Yeah.
That's just cost. I know you'd love a hard figure.
Sure. Yeah.
But
no,
again,
I know. Nobody knows. Yeah.
No one knows because there's so many variables.
Sure. But would you say that overall the big opportunities that happened in ICOs, these incredible stories, these gold rush stories we've all read about, are those largely over? Given the fact that you can't advertise anymore? I mean, it's just absurd beyond belief that, 3 big companies run the internet. I mean, that's just disgusting if you ask me, but and scary. Google is the scariest company on earth. Facebook's the second scariest. They both disallowed crypto advertising, which, I mean, the market is just too concentrated. That's another discussion, but these companies need to be busted up under antitrust laws, if you ask me, or regulated like utilities. And hey, I say that and I'm a libertarian, but this just ain't right the way it is. It's, any company that controls almost 70% of the global internet traffic is Big Brother times 10. I mean, that's just absurd.
So this is why you'll see many American companies going overseas.
Yeah.
Just saying, hey, SEC, keep your rules.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Estonia.
Yeah, but they want to sell into the American market. The Estonian market is tiny, and the other markets are, I don't know. The American market is huge. It's the biggest economy in the world. Yeah, I mean,
I agree with you. It is a huge economy, but it goes back to, are you developing the technology that's amazing? Are you developing a business that once you're able to show some traction abroad, then you can bring it in? Because the coin offering period, that's only 4 to 6 months.
Right.
If you raise some money in Singapore and you're started a business, you can turn around and, Samson Singapore blockchain business is up and running. I just opened up another branch here in the States and I fund it from my Singapore business.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
In which case, there's not an issue.
Decent strategy. Okay, good. What else do you want us to know? We've got to wrap it up, Samson. This has been very interesting. Tell us anything else we need to know before we go.
Pay your advisors in cash, and I'll tell you why. If you get advisors who only work for tokens, they will want to buy a cup of coffee at some point. So if your tokens hit an exchange or your cryptocurrencies hit an exchange, the only way for them to have a liquidity event or get cash is to sell them. Mm-hmm. If you've given me 1 million tokens, right, I was working for you for free, or rather I was working just in exchange for tokens. I can't use them until they hit an exchange. I might not actually have any, they might not have any value. But once they go from being worth, let's say, a penny to being worth $1, the likelihood of me taking them to the exchange and dumping them on the exchange is high, because I want to see the value realized out of that, particularly if I am an investor. If I come to you and I buy tokens at a discount, of 10, 15, 30, 50%, 60% discount, my goal is to get a return on that investment. And so I'm going to dump those tokens on an exchange. And that's you guys are dating that situation, right? You're not married. That's your girlfriend or boyfriend.
Right. Yep.
So when they dump them on the exchange, they cash out. They don't care about your business.
Sure.
Because they've made their return. And so if you get an advisor, pay them in cash, some token, and probably some equity. Because when you give them equity, that means they're incentivized to make sure your business lasts longer than your ICO. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's super important. There's also tax ramifications along that, because most people weren't thinking when they were doing the pumps and the dumps. Mm-hmm. When you got in at 2 cents and you dumped it on the market at $1, you're paying income tax on that difference.
Sure.
Uncle Sam doesn't really care what you do, so long you pay him tax.
Yeah. Get ready, because the tax man cometh. Good stuff. Samson, give out your website. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, my website is axesandeggs.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as Samson Williams. We're also on Twitter and Instagram until they ban us at Axes and Eggs.
That's so scary that you have to say that. Yeah. Oh my God.
And you can also follow me on my personal Instagram at HustleFundBaby. And so, yeah, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, good having you. I got to ask you before you go, what's behind the name Axes and Eggs?
So in the original gold rush of 1849, if you were a general store, you sold axes and eggs and pans and tools to the miner.
Got it.
And so we help people mine. We help set up businesses. We're happy to sell you those axes and eggs, those tools you need to get started. Yeah. And that's where the name came from.
Good.
And and at the time, you could only pay in gold. So we accept Bitcoin.
Yeah, there you go. Good stuff.
Cryptocurrencies.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for joining us, Samson.
Cool. Great talking to you.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.